Hit it again. Oh,
Hello,
there you
we
go.
well, you sure? Okay. Hello, we are three Black Pratt grads. My name is Mark Skinner, and I'm here with Kenneth Nelson and Greg Cleghorn, and we are three Black grads of
Said
Pratt
that already.
Institute.
Photo talk.
No, right? So anyway, we are that's the third time, three
Oh
black
gosh.
guys who actually graduated from Pratt Institute, golly gee willikers, at least 30 years ago, maybe a
Golly
little more.
gee
And
willikers. Boy, you
we
just put
are,
yourself back in the happy days.
yeah,
Golly gee williker, we graduated a while ago.
all right, that is true. So
Gee
what we do
willikers.
is we talk about different photographic topics with each one of these conversations. And today we're talking about photographers in fictional films. So I have a little introduction, and it starts as this.
Golly gee willikers.
Irving Kershner's Eyes of Laura Mars, 1978. Oliver Stone's Salvador, 1986. Mark Romanek's 1 Hour Photo, 2002. These are all films that speak to the idea of the photographer as a lonely, well-meaning spectator and tragic antidote. From 1954's Rear Window to 2014's Nightcrawler, the photographer is portrayed in most fictional movies as portrayed in most fictional movies, has been either an emotionally handicapped or in Rear Window, literally handicapped paranoid outsider. Yet in documentaries and tape
Paranoid
lectures,
outsider. Oh my God.
that's so true, isn't it? Yet
No.
in documentaries and taped lectures about or from real life photographers, the photographer is depicted as someone to admire, heralded for their vision and as well as their artistic vision. Okay. Now, here we go. In reality, the solitary nature of the photographer, regardless of genre, is the role of artisan technician. We are artisans of image creation, held almost entirely responsible as we also take sole credit for the images we create. Because we are primarily creative and independent, yet responsible individuals, what we do isn't always taken seriously. Of the films
What?
mentioned
I can't take what you just said seriously. Goodness gracious, what the heck?
Of the films mentioned in this introduction,
As I
only
was
Dan
so before I
Gilroy's,
was so
yeah,
rudely
right,
interrupted.
that's all right. Of the films mentioned in this introduction, only Dan Gilroy's Nightcrawler varies in that the protagonist is a news hunting videographer rather than a still photographer. I like to think that it's because the film was made after the invention of the smartphone and at a time in history when most of us got our news from either television, the web, and so in the age of the selfie, the still image, at least for a time, warrants little, if any, mystery. Although the selfie has moved on and self-produced video clips and various social media platforms replace still images in the global zeitgeist. I
Oh
hope
my
that in the near
God! What did
future,
you?
this is the last bit. I hope
Oh
that in
man,
the
let's
near
get closer.
future, the role of the professional photographer in the minds of the public can transform, regardless of the genre in which we work, from the seedy ones on our screens into the creative, vital, and virtuous professionals like the one portrayed in Stanley Donovan's 1957 Funny Face. Now, the real thing I want to say about that is I had not seen Funny Face until like a year and a half ago. So I'd seen maybe a clip of it on TV once or twice, like just Audrey Hepburn dancing, but I had no idea that Fred Astaire was in it. I had no idea that there was a photographer in it. And it wasn't until last year when it was winter and pandemic and there was nothing else to do. I watched the whole film and I was amazed. So
Yeah,
here we
Why
go.
are you amazed?
because it's a great film.
Because it's actually a very good film.
Well done
Well
photographically.
done.
It speaks to photography very well.
Yeah, and it's based loosely on Richard Avedon's life
Yep.
as a
Yep.
photographer, and it really says. I mean, oddly enough, I found that it is very similar to the way I approach what I do, and I had no knowledge of that film, and it's older than I am, so
Mm.
that's really it. So
Wait,
we have
that's
selected.
huge. Wait a minute. How you do what you do? How does it? How do you do what you do?
Well, it's basically a fashion photographer, and it speaks to the idea that when I take photographs of individuals, I kind of try to put them in a mood to express themselves, visually. I tell them, oh, you're at a table and you're having coffee, and it's a really late night, and you're really worn out, but you still look fabulous, or something like that. I try to get them in the mood so that I get the expression that I need for my photograph. But that's really it. I mean, the three
That's a
movies.
lot. You say it like it's nothing.
Well,
That's like
it
bread
is a
and
lot.
butter.
It is a lot, but it is a lot, and it's it's really important. But what I wanted to say were the first three movies I mentioned, like Salvador, was a movie that came out when I had just finished school, and it was about the adventure of going to San Salvador to be sort of a hero, to get news, but at the same time find yourself in the middle of a revolution and saving the people there. And that was roughly based on Susan Maizes, a great woman photographer from the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. I think she's still working, but she's another great woman photographer. We forgot to mention her last time. And Eyes of Laura Mars, even though it was kind of based on the work of Helmut Newton, Rebecca Blake, another great woman photographer, was consulted heavily on that. And that's really one of the first movies where you had the killer. And it, the killer, and she could see what the killer was doing. And I mentioned one other. Now,
What
Greg,
does that mean? The killer.
well, when you have when you have those slasher movies, and someone's psychic and they can see exactly what the killer sees, and they don't know what to do about how do they get these visions out of their heads, that kind of thing.
Wow. Okay, that's clear as mud now.
Oh well,
Who-
Well, you seen the movie?
No.
Okay.
Eyes of Laura
uh,
Mars. I mean, I haven't seen
I
it
didn't
in
want
a
to spoil the
long
end for
time.
you. It's only
You
40 years old.
cannot spoil these movies for me. You could talk. You could read the damn script to me.
Well,
You
I'm
will
gonna
not
I'm gonna
ruin
let
it.
Greg talk about 1 hour photo, because there's a lot to lot to unpack on that one, as they say.
No,
But
go ahead. Eyes of Laura Mars. Go ahead.
well, Eyes of Laura Mars is about a fashion photographer, and she deals with cutting edge for 1970s avant-garde fashion photography, which does tend to have a lot of bourgeois photography elements to it. And but
Boudoir or bourgeois?
no, boudoir. I mean, she has a
Okay.
lot of people in lingeries. It was roughly based on Helmut Newton's uh, photography at the time, where you'd have women. He would take photographs of women who were nude. They were always very, very, very thin, very, very pale. He even named the type of people that he would photograph as Nordfleisch, which was basically people from the Nordic countries, and he would put them in high heels and things like that, makeup and high heels. So this Eyes of Laura Mars is a film that's roughly based on what was then cutting edge, which was Helmut Newton's work, which for a
See, this has
publication.
been a great time to throw up a Helmut Newton image, so folks get an
Nah,
idea of. Yeah,
well,
it's all right. This is a talk about photography. We're
it
not
is.
showing any photography. That doesn't
Right.
make
And
any sense to me.
well, I wanted to have a discussion that was just about the characters, not so much the photographs, but how the
Characters.
photographer, yeah, how the photographers were portrayed. And she was pretty much a sort of a passive victim of some sort of possession almost. She couldn't figure out why, as she was taking photographs, her photographs were mysteriously looking just like the crime scenes as they were photographed by the forensic photographer. The police would say, "Hey, your fashion photos look just like what we saw at the crime scene." So, it's a movie that plays on both the audience's ignorance of what a photographer actually does, as well as a fashion photographer, as well as what a what do you call it, as what a forensic photographer did at the time. Everything's aligned just so that we can see the similarities. Anyway.
Without actually seeing anything.
Well, no, we see the crime scene. We'll see the bodies. We'll see the room that's been.
But we're not showing any pictures. We're just talking about somebody else shooting pictures that we're not seeing.
Yeah, well, we talked about this last week, so I'm not sure what your hesitancy is at this
I thought you might have changed your mind, but okay, go ahead.
point. No, I didn't change my mind. If I change my mind, I let you guys know. In any event, that's really it. But I really want to talk about the characters. So, but you guys have things to show and tell. So let's go to
Characters of what? I don't understand what you're.
the character. The protagonist of the movie is a photographer in each case.
So, didn't you just talk about it? What is it that you want to talk about?
Well, about who these people are. And I covered a lot of that in introduction. Like,
They're fictional
basically,
characters. I don't know.
yeah.
I'm not making the leap. Help me make the leap.
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we leap to whoever's next, and when we get back to you, because no, seriously, here's the thing. Here's the leap. The leap is very simple. Uh, this is really supposed to be about photographers in fictional movies. I didn't
Okay.
necessarily want to just say this is what a photograph looks like as taken by a movie set photographer on behalf of
No,
the
that's not what
character in
I'm
the
saying at
movie.
all.
Well, I
Oh
mean,
God, that's not what I'm saying at all. If that's what you think I'm saying here, you're way off. But
well,
go ahead.
well, are you saying or asking?
Saying or asking what?
What's on second? The question that you asked was like you wanted to know why we weren't showing photographs. And so I'm just telling you we were talking about the characters. And we don't need to see images to talk about the characters in the film. It's really about how
Okay, all right. Yeah, but my
well,
thing is, if this
I
is
mean
to talk about
guess
photography, we should be
what
showing
you're
photographs.
saying, I guess what you're saying is you have absolutely no interest whatsoever in how photographers are portrayed in film at all.
I didn't say that at all. Where are you getting that from? I did not say that at all in the most
Okay.
remote.
Well, then who's next?
Let me go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to show and tell
Yay!
rather quickly and just give the viewers three movies, fictional, where the characters are fictional, and they just happen to be photographers. So, that regard, Rear Window,
Rear window!
1954, Alfred
Woohoo!
Hitchcock. James Stewart as a photographer, and James Kelly, I think his love interest, is that right?
I
Yeah.
think it's Grace Kelly.
Grace Kelly, right, as his love interest, right? Photographer thinks he's seen a murder while voyeuristically looking out his window using binoculars and a camera. Yay!
He's a photojournalist, but go ahead.
Hey, he's holding a camera. That's all I'm going to
Okay.
tell you. Okay?
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm just going to give
Go
you
ahead.
three movies. I'm not going to
Go ahead.
explain them to
Go
you.
ahead.
If the people want to see them, let them go and see them. At least they have a visual to reference what they might be looking at. Next one, Blow Up. I've actually seen this movie. Very dated,
Lord.
1966.
Ooh, you got to
By
give me a list. Blow up. I
Michelangelo
never heard of it.
Antonioni, a fashion photographer, David Hemingway, unknowingly captures a murder on film while walking in a park one day. He blows up the picture to find out that what he thinks he's seeing in the photo at first glance is what he actually photographed, which is a murder. But of course, a series of plausible reasons for a dead body at the scene are the theories that move the movie along as to trying to figure out why there's a dead body in the movie. There's a dead body in the park. So that's enough to get people going if they want to. Look at the poster. I think it's a great poster. But hey, that's what I got for that. Next one, Bridges of Madison County. I didn't think about this one until earlier today, right? This one I saw. This one I read the book. Okay. I don't remember the photographer. Well, I think he was a photographer for Nat Geo in the book as well, because it's based on the book. So yeah, Bridges of Madison County, 1995, directed by Clint Eastwood. Robert Kincaid, played by Clint Eastwood, a National Geographic photographer, asked directions for the Rosamond Bridge from Francesca Johnson, played by
Hey, are
Meryl
you
Streep,
reading this
on a farm.
synopsis?
No, I wrote this. Forgive me, okay? On a
Oh
film in Illinois.
God.
Over the next 4 days, they fall in love, never to meet again. Okay, that's the synopsis. Okay,
That's like a
and
tease.
yeah.
Never to fall in. Oh,
Hey,
oh, now I got to go watch it.
well, yeah, well, I was hoping you would.
Yeah, you should. You should watch each of these movies.
You watch it, okay? I mean,
Now you send me a list. Where is it online? I mean, is it an online movie?
No, it's you can it's available on YouTube. I'm sorry, it's available on iTunes and it might be available on Netflix. I don't know about that, but I know it's
Well,
on iTunes. Okay, that's all I got for that, man. I just bought three.
Well, but here's the thing: what the personalities of each of these photographers. I mean, that's what I really was interested in,
Uh-huh.
because we are photographers, right? And I'm sure there are some overlap. There's some big overlap, and I started to talk about that earlier when Greg asked, about Funny Face, But I'm going to let Greg go through his, and then we could get to the meat of what I wanted to talk about, which is really like, how do these people forget the fact that they're in different times, in some cases different, in most cases different ethnicities, different ages, different everything, but what is it that overlaps about it, about the occupation for us, about what resonates as true, you know so
Mhm.
go ahead, Greg, you're up next.
well, my whole thing with movies, I mean, you're talking about movies about photographers, but some of the baddest photographers I've ever seen, as far as work goes, is those 30s and 40s movie makers. Their lighting, their whole theatrical presentation is just amazing. Their lighting and everything like that. But this is about Mark's topic, so I will try to abstain. Now, I had, you could pop it up, Ken, if you'd like. I'll just get through this and, without dismay. Um, the portrayal of photographers. This is 1 hour photo with the late Robin Williams. Patri Filii Spiritus Sancti, rest in peace, brother. And, they kind of, there was this tendency to make photographers a little bit on the creepy side, little, because they're in dark rooms, they look to the little camera, they're kind of voyeuristic. It's voyeuristic by its nature. So I kind of had this as an example of that, strange photo person that takes it a little too far, is into like another world. Because basically, most artists, are you ask them almost anything about anything, and depending on how far into that world they are, you'll get answers like, and don't you I want to hear any of you guys talk about you don't know about art talk or art speak, because that was some good, I almost said a beepable that you guys were chewing out there. Anyway, um 1 hour photo. Robin Williams sees a family, and anybody that worked at a lab probably can identify, because they look through the pictures for quality control. So that was a little creepy. That's why everybody kind of is happy that they have their own phone. They can do stuff and print stuff without giving them to the creepy guy at the store, who probably looks through their pictures and says all sorts of off-color remarks. So moving right along. Yeah, I think he mercifully dies, but all photographers are not strange, creepy people.
Oh no, Cy doesn't die.
Well, he should have, because that was some creepy stuff. Well, I mean, the
I'll let you
family
I'll let you
gets
get through
together.
these.
I
Yeah.
I really don't care, because that's okay. So, it's a good movie.
Hi.
He goes up against the family, and the family wins. Yay, family. Okay, Nightcrawler, Jake Gyllenhaal. He is a videographer, and say what you want or don't say what you want. Videographers are photographers. They just shoot at 30 frames a second. Okay, a lot of
Right.
times
You
what they
sound like
capture is
Stanley Kubrick.
okay. All right. The still photographer snobbery is prevalent. I can feel it. It's palpable. Wait, let me wait. Yes,
No,
there it is. Yes, there it is. Okay. So, another creepy guy who's trying to make a living, making money, and of course, societally, there's a certain perception of, the guys are go around and take pictures, and it reminds me of Ouija. He got pictures of great, amazing pictures of a suicide. This woman, had jumped, and she's just kind of floating in air. Oh God, the picture's just amazing to me. See, that's the kind of thing I would like to show. Stuff about photographers. Now, Jake Gyllenhaal, of course, he turned creepy because he's trying to sell and make a living. So he does some little offhanded things. So again, it doesn't really speak well to how photographers are perceived, and I can understand. Nice hair, Mark. So we get to the next movie, and the next movie is one where they bring back a little respectability to photographers. And he was a photojournalist. He was on assignment and he got injured. So he's literally an active visual artist, loves to get out there, loves to mix it up. And what has he done? He's stuck in his room staring at another tenement in New York. How much worse could it be? It can't, because New Yorkers are a lot of fun and they leave their windows open. So he gets this 3D, 360 experience of dancer, a lonely woman, all of these, calls her Lonely Hearts, which was great, amazing. And I'm a big Hitchcock fan, so I won't say he can do no wrong, but the way he told his story through his characters was just, to me, outstanding. And the fact that he's a photographer, he's nosy, but you can see the thinking, the thought process. It's not just this creepy guy taking pictures of, and then he actually caught a murder. So it was outstanding in my book, top shelf. Moving right along, go Hitchcock. Now, I just kind of flipped the script. Mark wanted fictional characters about photography. I've got a real life photographer who stepped in the fictional world and created Shaft. We're talking about none other than, next photo, Mr. Gordon Parks, the man, the myth, the legend. And, you know, socially and culturally and um, narratively of the time, and the way it's changed and the way photographers are perceived, I kind of like the idea of, Gordon Parks stepping out of his world and into the media world in the time that he did it, like, Elliot Erwitt, or I'm sorry, the Helmut Newton was shooting fashion, but chose to shoot only white models, in high heels, da da da. Gordon Parks also was in the high fashion with Vogue and his other work, but he also had his foot in another culture, and he saw the same movies that we've discussed, and it's like, well, where do I fit in this? So he kind of collaborated to make Shaft, and it's an amazing piece of work, and to see it come from a photographer, good on you, kudos. I'm all with that. I'm keeping it 100,
Well,
and I'm there. So
what you're saying is that he saw himself not necessarily as uh,
or he didn't see himself, but go
he
ahead.
did right. So he found a vehicle. He created a vehicle for which he could flourish, which was a black detective working in Harlem with Shaft. Now, the character isn't a photographer, but what you make is a good point that a photographer often can use their sense of timing and their compositional skills to migrate into the moving image should they choose to do that. But
Well,
there's one
go
thing I
ahead.
want to say is that, and Kubrick had done that also about 10, 15 years prior to Gordon Parks. So as much respect as I have for Gordon Parks, it wasn't entirely, that someone just decided to let him have a movie budget without a precedent being set earlier by another photographer uh, who who had moved from still photography to cinema.
Okay, so you're saying if it
What?
wasn't for Kubrick, Gordon Parks wouldn't have had what he did? Wouldn't have had Shaft?
I think if it weren't for the success of Kubrick's films, uh,
Which film?
uh, Doctor Strangelove, I think it was it. Did he do All Quiet on the Western Front? I think he did.
So you're
Um,
saying Kubrick
so
was a still photographer?
he was a still photographer for
Yeah.
many years in the
Hmm.
50s and 60s first, and then became and I think people, the idea of this guy who photographed for life deciding to make a movie, because Shaft wasn't his first movie, it was Learning Tree. So he made stories about Black life, and he was a photographer, and that's very good. Um, I think it's interesting that I think Kubrick's last film, Full Metal Jacket, he actually does have a character who is a photographer, and He died shortly after making that film. Oh no! Excuse me. His second to last film, I think Eyes Wide Shut was his second, but it was like the last one that he was actually able to enjoy making as a
Are you
photographer.
saying Kubrick or the
Kubrick, yeah,
photographer in them? Okay.
Kubrick.
Because as far as movies about photography, I was going to think of We Were Soldiers Once and Young. That movie was a real eye opener as far as the portrayal of a photographer who there is an aloofness, a separateness between the photographer or the person and what they're shooting, and they're not part of what's happening. They're kind of away from it and capturing it and then sending it off to the editor. They don't get involved. But this one, I forget the name of the photographer. I am so sorry. He had, I guess I could look it up. Can somebody look it up? The name of the photographer who was portrayed in, did you guys see it? We Were Soldiers Once and Young
No,
with
I
Mel,
haven't.
Mel Gibson?
Thank you for telling me
Put
about
that on
that.
your list. Write that one down. Put that on your list. Because it should, I don't know, how much would it take for me to call spoiler alert?
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, if it's an old movie, I have no problem if you tell me.
Yeah, neither would I. Go ahead.
Okay, well, he's a photojournalist a la Robert Capra. Unfortunately, he happens to be dropped in the first major conflagration between U.S. forces and Vietnamese national forces in the Drang Valley. And if you guys know anything about that, it was very bloody, and it was a thing of we had I hate to laugh, but it's not funny. We had a joke in the Navy because I was a Navy photojournalist, and we said if the photojournalists have to pick up a weapon, we're in big trouble. So I'll just say it short and sweet. He had to pick up a weapon. So I'll leave it there. I would parental advise. There are some graphic and difficult scenes in there. If not, wouldn't say it's suited for the kids. They may be old enough, but it's a very, very strong movie about this photojournalist, war photographer, and he goes through this process. And then near the end, Mel Gibson says, I don't know how to tell this story. He said, tell it like you saw it. And that just blew me away. I'm like, oh, that just gave me every right as a photojournalist to write what I saw and to show what I saw. And if someone can't handle what they're seeing, that's with them. Because this part, I know you can Photoshop and change images, but if it's true, pure photojournalism without alteration, that's what happened. Period.
Right.
So
And the idea is that photographers seek out for more. They seek. We seek images for all intents and purposes. We actively walk around taking photographs, or we build a set, or whatever it is we do to accomplish that task. We actively seek existing or create something that exists so that we can make a capture. And so if you can't handle what it is you're photographing, you do have the choice not to photograph. But you also have the choice to not go into that line of work. That not shouldn't be a photographer, but if let's say you're somewhere where you're only photographing weddings, you have a choice to just say, I really don't want to do weddings. Now, if you have a steady wedding business, you're probably going to cut your nose to spite your face because it can be very lucrative, but that is your choice. I mean, even Irving Penn at some point said, I'm tired of fashion. I want to do flowers. And he went and photographed flowers. So it happens to the best.
okay, you left me somewhere else. I'm like drifting in space out here. But okay.
Oh no, what I was saying, you said if you can't handle what you see, then you shouldn't be there. And what I was saying was that even Irving Penn, who's one of the greatest fashion photographers, greatest artistic photographers of the 20th century, he at some point said, I'm tired of photographing fashion. And so he went and started photographing flowers because he was tired of fashion photography after 50 years or 40 years.
Well,
Yeah,
40
yeah,
years is 2 careers, but go ahead. I'm sorry,
yeah.
Kenny, what?
No. I was thinking of. I had conversations today about other facets of life that were very similar in that vein, such as how long can you stay in one job, right? And the fact
We're
that is
still photographers.
right. Well, I'm not even speaking photographers in general. I'm just speaking,
Oh,
how long, if you were working at a
jobs in
fast food
general.
restaurant, yeah, how long can you stay? How long would you stay at a fast food restaurant? Do you really want to do 30 years at a fast food restaurant? Maybe, and,
Some,
I'm
you
I'm
know,
not saying that that's
some of
bad.
them
I'm
guys
just
make good
saying,
money. Those
I'm just
managers
saying that,
make six figures.
well,
Right.
yeah,
We all know that, Greg. I
right,
mean, I think the idea is a little bit higher level than just the money, because for
right,
this conversation, because we all
right,
know the money's most important in the bottom line.
right. Right.
Yeah,
Because I was having the conversation earlier today because I was telling someone that, I spent so and so years at this place, and thank goodness I'm no longer there because I spent most of my adult life there, but I'm glad that's over with, you know, because
Okay.
experiences are new and you're looking for new experiences. And so new experiences within the photographic field is quite refreshing, if not, looking for new experiences outside the photographic field as well, you know so I'm like, because we're so pigeonholed to such a degree that we narrowly focus our brains at this little small section of life, and thinking, well, yeah, there's that thing that's happening way over there in right field, there's one in left field, and if you want to do football analogies, yeah, there's a game happening on the other side of the 50-yard line. Make it to that side and you got a new game, you got a new life, you
right.
know
But
and
but you mentioned Bridges of Madison County,
yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
And so Kincaid's, he's there, and he was in a very small sort of section in his life where he was
Hmm.
best collecting images of these various bridges in
Hmm.
one county,
Yeah.
right? And he stumbles upon his humanity in a different way. We all
Yeah.
like to think that our artistic expression is our humanity, and so he was very much involved in his self-expression, and then he discovers someone who sort of takes him out of himself,
Hmm.
right, for those 4 days, right,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and then he's transformed by that experience, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that it's I guess it's similar to what you're saying. He probably spent years just project after
Yeah.
project, a steady gig, but bridges, maybe it's
Yep.
old cars,
Yep.
maybe it's this, and
Yep.
then finally, something rattles him out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and quite by surprise, So, it speaks to personality types, because
Mhm.
we're talking about personality types, and I think I fit into that quote unquote stereotypical personality type of photographer. So, what you
What is
described
that?
earlier, well, I guess we could speak to introvert. We have a certain sense of voyeurism that we are inclined to stick to. So those are two things that I think are within myself. And of course, there goes with the creativity as well. So, it's a combination of a lot of things. Just those are
Okay.
just a few.
Well, I guess the question then, I think each one of us, both Ken and I have said that, we see parts of our own personality in these cinematic photographers, well, parts of ourselves that we like, okay, in these cinematic photographers. Greg, is that something, when you were speaking about this movie, was We Were Once Soldiers, is that character someone
We
that
were soldiers once. Go
they
ahead.
were sorry, they were soldiers, we were soldiers once. Because I haven't seen the
And
film. I
young.
apologize. See, I thought you were going to say The Public Eye about Ouija, but is there a particular character in any movie that you uh, said, that's me? I know you said that one gave you the license to do what you do. Would you say that out of all the films about photographers speaks to you uh, most in terms of how you approach your photographic work? I mean, it may be redundant to answer, but I'm going to ask anyway.
Well, that one is very close. Um, because it's you. He didn't pick that battle. He didn't know he was going to be in the middle of that battle. But you're there. You do your job until you have to step into the real world. It forces you to face the real world. Uh-oh, I'm at 10%, so let me wrap this up. So that's a close one. The other that I feel personally attached to is Get Out. The
Okay.
young man was a photographer, and he just hooked up with the wrong babe and went up to the family house, and they wanted to kill him and harvest his organs. So,
I see.
Oh, that you identify very well with. You're saying that going to a girlfriend's house for Thanksgiving, you will be harvested.
yeah, well, I've dated some doozies. Not quite that bad, but sure it was painful.
See, but I gave you an out. You're supposed to say, no, I'm not good enough for Thanksgiving.
No, I'm not good
Maybe
enough for Thanksgiving.
maybe an all-holiday barbecue. See, you're supposed
Anything
to.
with hot links and tater salad,
Yeah.
I'm there. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all I've got. If you guys got anything else.
Kind of interesting that I remember seeing the movie Get Out, but I don't remember him being a photographer, which all these things escape me, these little things, I get
Big
upset when
old
I don't remember that part of the movie.
big
You
old
know,
honking camera. He's taking
I
pictures and all this weird stuff. He's takes a
okay,
picture and then he like kind of snaps away. Yeah, go watch it again. It's
okay.
Mr. Peel. Excuse me, Mr. Jordan. Which one did it? Who did that? Was it
It was Jordan
Peel or it
Jordan
was
Peele.
Peel? Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, very nicely done. Very nicely done. Is it over yet?
Oh my goodness, this is so excruciating for you. Who would know? See, I think it's fascinating how, because that sets I think these films set the tone of how people perceive what you do, because it's a curious.
Who are you talking about? Modern day people? Like
Yeah, I
most
think
modern
everyone.
day people
I think
don't
less.
take
I think less
unless
so now. Well, let's put it this way. Let me ask you a question. Yeah, I would say yes. I would say modern day people less so than before, because since everyone has a camera in their pocket, it's not so mysterious. But I would like, would you, I mean, you know what, if you teach, you should show The Public Eye and Nightcrawler together,
you
and
should teach.
talk about the
I
time,
feel for them.
between, you know.
Yeah, I would definitely, most definitely, thank you for that suggestion. Send me some links, fellas. Send me the links. I'd be happy to impart. That would be good.
So, I'm sorry, Greg, that you're so put off by this topic.
Well, I mean, we're photographers. Photographers
Yes,
take photographs.
I
So,
think
I
it's
mean,
very interesting. Well, that's okay. I
I'll
will
be right
probably
back. I'll
ask
get some water.
how photographers are depicted in lectures. They're
Yeah, I
getting done.
mean,
Wow, that'll be an interesting thing to see. Yeah, and
lectures.
yeah, yeah, and it's funny because I guess the part two of this would be documentary films on photographers would be the next one.
No, it wouldn't.
That
I should come up with like do a Cindy Sherman movie still and photograph it. Just
oh,
chitter
well,
chatter.
you got a lot of props for yourself to do that,
No, it doesn't. Use your imagination. Why do you always say, "Oh, it can't be done"? Oh, come on.
Have you seen Cindy Sherman's work? She's
I
Well,
did
I
fantastic.
think
not. I
well,
said a la Cindy
I think
Sherman.
the
I'm not
simple one
saying
would
do a
be
Cindy Sherman setup.
I think I think some of them would be quite simple. The exterior one and with the outside buildings, and she's got the hat on. I think that would be the easiest one to do.
I think that they use that at the Modern Museum of Art's
Yeah, that's
membership cards.
yep, yep, yep,
That's a nice one. Yeah, I hear you.
yep.
Well, I think we should probably close this out, or else either Greg will either fall asleep or just walk away.
No,
So
he's there. He's there.
I'm back.
you're
Yeah,
back.
yeah,
What are
he's
you
back.
you down to 3% on your laptop?
Probably. I'm ready though, unless you're
Oh
gonna
my goodness!
close.
Well, you want to plug in? Plug in. No. All right. I guess there's not much more to say. I just thought it was really interesting how many photographers were in the movies, and how they are depicted. And I think it's interesting that fashion photography seems to sort of dominate that. It's like fashion photography and then news photography. And I think that's what's interesting about Madison County is that that main character is neither.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting. It's a difference. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
look for that movie. I will definitely look for that movie. I mean, it is a good topic. I'm not, I may be falling asleep or whatever, but it is a good
well,
topic. How photographers are depicted. It's because it's a cultural, social
mhm.
phenomenon. It is
Well, I
absolutely.
think it's interesting in that when we first started with photography, I was like, oh yeah, Salvador is gonna be like how it's gonna be because you have your camera and you're running into these situations,
Uh-huh.
and and I
But you
think
don't do that kind of photography. You like
exactly what I'm
your
going to
stuff
say.
to stay still.
Right. What I'm going to say is that some 35 years later, I found myself really appreciating in hindsight what Funny Face says about photography. It's just a really not the dancing, not the romance, not even the magazine, but just how one tends to capture those types of images. It's pretty on point to a certain extent, to at least
Yeah.
for some people. I mean, not everybody works that way, but for some people.
Yeah, but it's a bit over the top in terms of the comedy and the way they approach the magazine director,
Yeah.
the editor, and her character. It's just pretty much over the top, and a little bit of the movie over the top. But I think the solidity of his character and how he's portrayed is very good. And it's funny because when you brought it up, I didn't remember that movie. That is probably one of the movies that I would actually recommend people see. Mainly because it's Audrey Hepburn's in there, but because the storyline is good and because it has one of the main characters is a photographer who's based on a real life person.
I got
Funny face, huh?
Funny
yeah.
face.
Yep. And I got one bit of trivia for you from Eyes of Laura Mars before we close out, and that is that the director of Eyes of Laura Mars was the same director of The Empire Strikes Back.
Okay. Oh man. Okay, you
Did
lost
you
me.
hear
Who is
those
that?
crickets?
Who
Did you
is
hear
that?
crickets?
It's Irving Kershner.
Kirshner.
Irving Kershner, and he directed the second Star Wars film.
Okay.
Oddly enough,
And Obi-Wan Kenobi was really good with the 35 millimeter.
yeah, he didn't even have to rewind when once he got to frame 37. That's not the frame that we want, and then the camera would rewind on its own.
There it is.
There you go.
There it
Okay.
is.
All right,
Okay. Mark, close it out, please, before we go crazy.
all right. My goodness. All right, here we go. We are going to close this out. Anyway, I'm Mark.
Photography talk without photography is like a salad bar with no salad.
It's good for radio. Anyway, we are.
I have achieved nirvana.
It's like a podcast. Anyway, here we go. There you go. That's something also from a little earlier than all of this. Anyway,
Nirvana?
no podcasts that are
The,
audio only.
the nerve.
Anyway,
That's what
here we
you've the nerve. That's what we've achieved. What? The podcast? What?
Anyway, I'm Mark Skinner. I'm here
Yes,
with
you are.
Kenneth Nelson and Greg Cleghorn. We
Howdy.
have been the three Black Pratt grads, and we've been talking about, at least for the most part, photographers in fictional films. Thanks. See you next time.